You are listening to the ParkFlyer podcast, where we discuss our RC adventures.
Welcome to the ParkFlyer podcast, where we discuss the ups and downs of the new RC Flyer. Join your hosts, Michael and Jay, as they take flight at the park. Now on with the show.
Hey everybody, welcome to the ParkFlyer podcast. I'm Michael, and with me in the studio today
is Jay, formerly from the AK.
You said formerly from the AK. What does that mean?
Yeah, I did. You know, I had this crazy notion to pick up and leave and go down to this little small state here in the lower 48.
So, the small state meaning?
I think they call it Texas.
Yeah, right on. Now, you know I'm from Texas, so I'm partial to that. But you're moving from the biggest state to the second biggest state.
Oh,
right?
Okay. It is the second biggest? Okay.
Yeah.
When you're number one, you don't really think about everybody else.
You don't look towards number two?
No. You know.
No, nothing wrong with that.
I mean, Texas only takes up, just a little bit of the, it's just a state.
That's true.
Alaska takes up 2/3 of America. People don't realize that.
Yeah, that is a big state. So, well, welcome to the studio. We're live today. It's Valentine's Day.
It is.
And we were able to go out this morning and fly together.
It was. We got to go out to the field and fly with all the folks and with your club, and it was fun. The first thing I like is that we didn't have to shovel anything.
Yeah, we were shoveling snow.
My back is killing me. Just before I came down here, I mean, it's kind of surreal to just a day ago be shoveling, a foot of snow to clear out my camper so I can take my truck and park it underneath. And then, to be here and my dog is down here, and it sounded like she was a marathon runner.
Yeah. She's
last night. She was in the room with us, and I just hear, oh gosh. I'm like, golly, do we have to take you to the vet? My gosh.
Take this sweater off of me. That's pretty funny.
But no, it's great being down here. It's nice. And plus, it's really cool to be in the same studio with each other for once.
Yeah, it is. Most of our podcasts are done via Skype, obviously, in several states away. But this is kind of neat because we can kind of see each other and talk with our hands and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so. And the eye contact. That's also kind of nice to actually see you and get the whole the eye contact, what's going on, what you're thinking. That it's amazing. We as humans, when we don't see that interaction with each other,
that's true.
It's kind of lacking. It kind of helps along with the conversation.
Well, good. Well, I'm glad you're here. Welcome. We made arrangements today to go to the Electric Festival, I think.
We did.
Yeah.
We did. Things just worked out for us, and it looks like first we were thinking about doing it a couple of months ago, and then fortunately, I sold my house, and then I had other things in my mind, and it just all worked out. So I got a flight, came down here. Might as well go see Mike. Stay for a couple of days. Hey, the Electric Festival is only a couple of days after that. We were able to stay. And now we're going.
Well, good. Hopefully we'll do a podcast from the Electrical Festival.
I think so. I think we could try to do something.
Electrical Festival.
Electrical?
Yeah, it's Electric Festival.
Electric. Yeah, sorry.
So you brought me some things. This is pretty interesting.
What is this? It's Christmas in February.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's kind of a tradition. This
is true.
I come to your house and I always want to entice.
Yeah.
And like I said, I like to say I'm your muse, and a muse for folks who want to get into a hobby. And so I don't want you to get bored.
Yeah, I'm not bored.
Well, sometimes you look, I just got to go out and fly this.
I know.
Oh,
right?
Look, I'm doing a 3D. I'm doing hair here. Oh, look at that. 4-point turn. So I always want to bring down something new and fresh, and just to kind of get your juices thinking and going.
Yeah.
Make
me think more three-dimensional.
Well, just to pique your interest. It's like when you came up to Alaska and we flew water planes.
Yeah,
the whole time that you were up there.
Oh,
or I took you out and we did night flying.
Sure.
And you'd never done that before. So I'm always trying to think of something to kind of introduce you, to get you excited about the sport. Even though you seem to get excited every time we test a new model. That's always exciting.
Oh yeah, that was exciting.
Things go wrong. But anyway, so this time down, I thought, well, what can I bring you? Because unfortunately, you travel a lot, you read a lot, you do a lot.
Yeah.
So I bring you a new speed plane? No, that's boring.
What are you saying? What do you get the guy that has everything?
Kinda. You're kinda like that. So, and plus,
Not
I
intentional,
know your
by the way.
personality, and I know I don't want to get you some big trainer looking thing, that's butting along, oh, Jay, it looks great. It's really authentic. Thanks.
The ugly, ugly stick.
And then I come back and it's still in the box and it's propping up your TV. Hey, Mike, are you going to put that together? Oh yeah.
Yeah, eventually.
I was just waiting for you next time you came back. So this time I figured I'd get you something that you didn't have before. So I thought I'd get you some funky whirlybird.
Yeah, this is weird. I've never really even thought about a gyroplane.
Yeah. So I got you an auto gyro, and it's from Bang Good Hobbies. It's a nice
That's
little model.
our favorite place.
It's starting to become our new one. Yeah. And they've been coming out with new planes, and I saw it, and it was quite literally. And this is how this happens between you and I.
Right.
I see something. Yeah, I'm not even thinking about it. I may be thinking about something very specific I want to do or get for you, and then bang, something just rolls across my desk, or I hit a website, and I go, "That's it." Oh, let me order it right now.
Right.
So this time I worked my little magic, and it should have shown up, when you go on your trips, so that you go off to work, you came back, and we'd be arriving like the next day or two.
Right.
It's going to arrive like that night or that
Right.
day that I got there. So we'd have time to build it together while I'm here and enjoy it while I'm here. So of course, the weirdest thing happens with all this stuff, especially with our plans.
Murphy's Law.
Murphy's Law. What happens?
It goes to the wrong post office.
Exactly. So I'm tracking this thing on my phone, and I look down, and it goes, I'm still in Alaska, and Mike was just coming back home. In fact, you had just landed,
Right.
and you're driving back, and I'm like, "Are you going back to the house?" And you're like, "Yeah, I'm heading that way." Trying to get things ready for you, and I'm watching the postal thing, and I'm like, "Oh, it's getting delivered this afternoon. Perfect."
By the way, I didn't know this was coming.
Oh, you didn't know. You didn't know it was coming. So I'm like, oh, this is perfect. It's going to surprise him. This will be great. I'm coming down the next day. Excellent. And I look, and it says, package not delivered, returning back to sender. And I'm like, what? It just came from Xinjiang, China.
It's okay. They know me there.
That's right.
They thought it was going to that
we have
address.
package for Mr. Mon. So anyway, I said, oh, I don't want that to happen. Let me, what do I do? So I'm looking at this thing, and it's saying, undeliverable, address not found. And I'm like, what, did something happen? I mean, I've sent many packages to you.
Yeah, that's true.
So how is this one not able to find you? But it said, hey, nope, this address doesn't exist. It cannot be found. We'll be returning to sender. Not like, oops, we'll try to resend out the next day. It just made it it was very short and brief, and just said, hey, we're returning this package. And I'm like, oh no.
Right.
So finally I kind of let the cat out of the bag, and I'm like, hey, was there anything, a note in your, on your door or your mailbox or whatever? And he's like, no. And I'm like, that's even worse. All right. So it wasn't like they showed up at your house and couldn't, it needed to be signed for. So I'm kind of panicking. I'm like, that's weird. Hey, how far is the post office from your house?
Yeah, I'm receiving these texts as I'm slowly making my way up to the house, because I live about 50 miles from the airport. So I land and then, make my way back, and I'm running some errands because I don't want to come up to the house and then turn around and have to go back. And I keep getting these texts. Hey, are you home yet? Hey, are you home yet? By the third one, I figured, okay, something's probably being delivered and I'm not there to receive it. So that's finally, he was like, gosh, dang it. This thing got returned, and I had to be brought in on the surprise, but it was pretty funny. It got really delivered to the wrong post office. They put it in the wrong bin, basically. Right. So it went to the main post office instead of my satellite post office. So I literally, realized what happened. I jumped in the car. I ran all the way to the post office. And what do you think?
We closed.
I got there at 5:01. And the guy goes, we're closed. Yeah. So I had to wait till the following day to finally get it. But, and that's actually when you were coming in.
Right.
It was the following day.
Right.
So finally I figured out what happened, and it actually worked out. They did deliver it that day, the day that I picked you up. So by the time both of us got back to the house, it was sitting on the porch. So
yeah,
good.
and surprisingly enough, it didn't have much damage.
No,
because
especially for the way they just threw the parts in the box, man. I've never seen anybody pack a box like this.
I think they were running short on. It must have been like a Tuesday or a Monday or a Friday when they were wrapping the package because
they were out of bubble wrap.
They were out of bubble wrap or like one piece of tape to close it.
That's right.
We got to make this last, Charlie. And
Exactly.
and how much bubble wrap do we have? The scrap that's laying on the floor. We could probably cut it in half and
save some.
Save some and wrap it.
Well, it
around.
is the Chinese New Year.
Oh,
so
it was.
It's their B team.
It went out the day before.
Oh, man.
I just made it under the wire when I ordered it, so it just worked out. But yeah, they definitely were running out of supplies, because of it. But it made it there. We only had one little small part that was chipped off. We were able to.
Yeah, but we glued that back on. The funny part is I picked the box up and I kind of gave it a little shake. You know how you do that? It's just a natural tendency, like rattle. And I'm thinking, well, whatever it was is it's not in good condition now because
it's more in dust form.
Yeah, it's like, wow. Most of the stuff you send me is kind of quiet. This thing is rattling around like a box of, crackers. And I was like, But no, it worked out pretty well.
It did. So the nice part about this gyrocopter, it went together fairly easy. We put it together in one night.
Yeah.
And I will say, once again, I want to recommend things for beginners.
Sure.
But this is not for a beginner.
Because it has no directions or because of the way it flies? Which one is?
A little of both. Yeah. A little of both.
Because I don't even think they wrote it on the box. Good luck. That was it.
It was good luck. Yeah, you kind of just, that's kind of how it was. Basically, if after you do some hunting around online, you can find a series of 6 pictures, and that's all that they have.
Yeah.
And that's it. There's no explanation. There's no arrows. Oh no, they have one picture with they have some parts outlined in a red box.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And that's it. So you have to figure out why they outlined them in a red box or red. They put in the red box and what that significance of that is.
Right.
So they also send you mystery parts.
Did we have mystery parts?
Yes.
In this one?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. The two.
So
they were just 2 blue little. I think they were 3D printed parts. Yeah.
So you end up.
What do these go to?
So if you remember the old GWS planes, right? They would send you a sheet or two of just parts.
Right.
But it was for all their kits, and that's why they did it to save money.
Sure.
They give you a thing, and you just took the kits, the ones that you wanted. But in the beginning, you didn't know that, so you just have all these parts, and you're thinking they have to go to the plane. You're like, how am I going to get all those parts to fit on the plane?
This is the weirdest looking part. And how does it fit on this square?
Yeah, it's only a one channel. I don't know why I would have 50 clevises.
50 parts.
So in this one, you see the blue part. It's blue, and you see the blue parts that are on the plane because the rotor head was all assembled for you, which was nice. And it came with the mast. It was all assembled. Sure. And it's
albeit loose.
It was loose. Yeah, right. It's loose. But at least everything was laser cut. You could pretty much just fit the whole thing together in 5 minutes, to kind of figure it out. But anyway, you put this together, you see similar parts that are similar that are in the rotor head, but they're not the same. And so you're like, well, this is different. And then you're looking at the plane and you go, oh, there's a spot here for servos in a different spot.
Right. Yeah, there were 3 servo mounts.
Right. So then you're scratching your head going, so are there 3 servos or 2? Because accordingly, you only need 2 servos to fly this. Well, 3 altogether, but not on the rotor head mast. So we were sitting there just staring at this thing. I jump online. I'm researching everything.
To Google we go.
To Google. To the Googles.
To Googles.
So I'm researching all around and I'm finding these obscure websites and I start falling. It turns out that this plane is used. It has like 2 or 3 different names and then it was in 2 or 3 different series. So I looked at all those things combined. And once again, nobody wrote up a build report or.
Yeah, that was very interesting. And
I guess it was one of those things like I built it. I guess you're going to have to find out how fun it is yourself.
It's a secret.
It was one of those.
I did it.
I did it. You're going to have to do it too.
Right.
Hey, Dad, can you tell me a secret? Like, no, son, figure it out yourself. So we like I said, we were able to figure out a couple of things. Like, there's a few angles and some stuff that not that it would have been a major problem, but everybody else had a different angle. So we figured out the angle thing. And it turns out that this piece for the head it says, version 2 now you have to make 2 decisions for how you want to fly. That's that was it. That was the clue you got. And so the basic thing that we were able to figure out was that the head, depending on how you wanted to control your plane, if as it comes, it's for if you set it up as an Elevon setup.
Right.
The other piece, if you assemble it onto the head, is if you want to have a straight, what do you want to call it? Elevator aileron setup.
Right. You have a forward, back, left, and right, basically.
And so, so we went ahead, and I've always had the gyrocopters that I've always had were just straight, elevator aileron, type assemblies. So this time Mike goes, well, let's do it in the Elevon setup and see how it flies. So that's what we did. Yeah,
it worked out pretty well. The helicopter went together, or the gyrocopter went together really well. The landing gear just took 2 screws, and we fiberglassed the tail end of it.
Right. Because this was the tail end, the part, the elevator and the rudder part. They were EPP. I guess it was EPP.
Right.
Okay. So that's kind of flimsy, and I guess they did that because
flexible,
flimsy. Flexible. And so I guess the reason they did that is depending on how you hit the ground hard or whatever, that back end would get smacked around. But Mike went ahead and you reinforced it. So what
I did, I took the Minwax that we've talked about in previous podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
I have some 0.48, I believe, I think it's
very lightweight.
Yeah, very, very super lightweight fiberglass. I just laid all the parts out because they were flat, and I put the fiberglass over it, and then I just Minwaxed over the one piece, let it dry, cut them all out again. I turned them over and put it out second time, and man, it strengthened them up pretty good.
It did stiffen it up very nice, and it makes it durable. I once again, I'm amazed here.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things that Mike was able to do. We messed a little bit with some epoxy, and we did the Minwax.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say, here in your state,
oh yeah,
it's amazing how quick things dry.
Oh, that's right. We did epoxy the corners, right?
And once again, you were working with a little bit. You were doing some epoxy work, and you mixed up maybe one of those little cough drop cups.
Yeah, pretty much
about half full, and you were mixing it. It was half an hour epoxy, and it cooked off pretty quick.
Yeah, it stiffens up pretty well. I like the Zap product. It seems to be much better. The stuff I buy at Home Depot or Lowe's, we talked about in the past. My face blows up. It doesn't blow up as bad this time.
You actually didn't have a problem with it this time.
My wife still, when I came walking in, she said, you've been working with epoxy again, because she can notice the difference, and my eyeballs get kind of puffy, but they didn't swell up like they normally do. But yeah, the
EpiPen.
Exactly. The rudders, rudder. It's not really a rudder because the rudder's on its own, but the elevator has 35-degree tabs on it, I think is what how would you describe that?
Are you talking about on the oh, you mean
like the fins that are on the back?
Right. So for you guys to understand, so the back end of this, we'll put it in the description as well. But the back tail end of this gyrocopter, instead of just having a flat elevator, and I guess this is for stability. So instead of just ending and being flat, they come in about a third or a little less than that on each end.
Yeah, they're just kind of
and then cut those, and then cut that. You would cut the elevators off, the tips of the elevators off, and then you'd put them at like 35-degree angles.
Yeah.
So that's what they look like, pointing up. And
what I did is I took the Quick Grip, which is a kind of a contact cement.
Contact cement.
I put it on either side of it, and I stiffened it together. I mean, I put it together and kind of made it go through its little contact deal, and then I bent them up. I just kind of put them at a pseudo angle. I didn't really measure anything. I just kind of put them at that angle.
Right.
Then we actually created a template out of Depron, stuck it on there, and then we fiberglassed the angle. So we put epoxy, and then we dropped some fiberglass so that it was part on the upper part and on the lower part, and then we set the template underneath it and let the epoxy dry. So now it's at the exact 35-degree angle.
Right.
And it's not really flexible because it's been fiberglass in that corner. So.
Yeah, but it still can bend. It still can move. It can still do all sorts of things. So that's fine. But
right.
I just like the fact that it's very tough. It's still much stiffer now that you min-waxed and stuff. So it's that tail end's going to last a long time.
Yeah, and then due to the fact that it had fiberglass on it, I was able to walk outside and little spray paint.
Oh yeah, which is definitely needed.
Yeah, because they were white. So now it's the front of it has a sticker that goes on it. It's white, yellow, and kind of a purplish color. I didn't have purple in my stack of paints, but I did have some Cub yellow and I did have some blue. So I just went out there and made a little kind of a pointy, I don't know what you call those, but yeah, they're little marks on the tail so that it looks kind of cool. And now it's got a yellow tail with blue markers on it. So
would you recommend they just put the stickers on and just go fly it? Or they should definitely paint it or put tape on it or...
Well, the problem is that this thing doesn't have a wing. It's got a rotor blade.
Right.
So the rotor blade was spinning around, and we didn't maiden it today.
Mm-hmm.
It actually flew a little tail heavy, which was surprising. We fixed that. Luckily, I got it on the ground back in one piece. Then, I started flying it around again. It got airborne, which is really weird because you have to get the head speed up.
Yep.
That was new for me, and it doesn't react like an airplane. So when an airplane starts getting into trouble, my initial reaction is to yank the power to idle, level the airplane out, get some speed in a dive. The airplane slows down. This is nothing like that because you pull the power to idle and now you have no forward propulsion, which means your rotor speed starts to slow down and the airplane or the gyrocopter will start to spin, which was a little unsettling. The rudder on the thing, I have a lot of throw in this rudder and it's tiny.
It's a tiny rudder. You wouldn't think it would do anything, but it does.
Yeah, it spun that thing around pretty good. So luckily for me, I got both on the ground both times. I didn't destroy it. The landing gear kind of came off in one of the little parts. It's in repair right now, but we did get 2 successful flights out of it. It was kind of neat to hear that rotor head going around. I will tell you that if I hadn't have painted the tail yellow, I would not have been able to see it because it's just basically a pod up front and this white tail in the back.
And it's not that you can't see it; it's an orientation thing.
It is an orientation thing.
Okay, we got a lot of hours flying, right?
True.
So
just a couple.
Even though that's like let's talk about the wings, like when we're flying the wings.
Sure.
Half the time, I can't really see what it's doing in the sense, but I recognize the profile. Depending on its profile or how it's turning or how it's flying as to what it's doing, as long as I can kind of see that, I know it's banking or it's turning or it's upside down or whatever side it's painted. But, for the most part, I guess we don't think about it, but I'm used to that profile when I'm looking at it.
Right.
This thing, you recognize the fuselage.
Right.
You recognize the tail, but because it has no wings, it doesn't have a wing.
Right.
You can't tell whether it's going forward, backwards, going away from where you're banking. So, you're just not used to it yet. And that's why I was saying to you, keep this thing close. This is another model.
Yeah, you would have to
until you get used to it, you have to keep it close to you. Because if you let it fly out what you would normally do for a ParkFlyer, next thing you're like, you're squinting, Oh, what's it?
I was squinting.
What's it? Is it going?
And I was worried about the trees.
Yeah.
Because I got really close.
Yeah, the trees
what
were
I
sucking.
thought was close for the trees.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, the trees, close, you know how that goes. The trees started sucking or breathing in, sucking in all the oxygen. The model got closer to him. I started getting kind of worried because I'm like, hey, oh man. And you lost orientation a little bit. Because you couldn't, it was going, you couldn't tell, it was flying fine.
Right.
It was flying fine.
Right.
And then you couldn't tell whether it was going that way or coming back to you.
Right.
And next thing you know, and next thing that I saw, you yanked on that tail, the rudder, and it.
Oh man, that thing spun around and quick.
Yeah. So that's another thing about this gyrocopter you got to think about is kind of like helicopters. You have that, if you go in the direction that the rotor's spinning, you can turn on a dime.
Yeah, you can. It turned a lot faster than what I was going to be.
Exactly.
What I was normally used to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
For how many planes have you maiden, right?
I can't count.
And usually they don't respond that way.
No.
Because when you kicked that the first time you had it airborne, and I could tell you honked on that rudder and that thing just jerked right around. You were like,
right.
You were like, whoa.
I know it did catch me by surprise.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really did.
So once again, was it a super successful maiden? No, we kind of maiden it. It wasn't joyful, doing high fives and all, but it was still interesting. It was still a lot of fun. We're going to do some of those minor repairs and get out there and have a much longer flight. But the thing is, it it sounds really cool. You got to admit the head of the rotor sounds really
I
good.
cannot believe you just spun it around, and if there's just a slight breeze, he literally was holding his hands, and he just did like a 360-degree rotation, and that thing spooled up like nobody's business.
Yeah.
It was very impressive how loud and, helicopterish it sounds.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you launched it, I put a little power to it. You just let it out of your hands, and that thing just started going forward.
Exactly.
So that was kind of neat. But I understand you have to have a little bit of a breeze, because
It
if
helps.
you have no breeze, I
helps.
could see that this thing.
Yeah.
And it flies relatively slow. I
It
was
does.
expecting it to really take off, and it really didn't. It just kind of hovered around.
And that's what I was trying to explain to you. It was very hard for me to try to explain to you, when you're flying it. It's one of those things, once again, you just have to do it. You just hear the controls.
And I've never done anything like this. So this is new for me. Never having flown. I've flown helicopters.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not very good at it, but I can, hover it, and I can fly it around. And on the simulator, I'm great, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
I can 3D all the helicopters, but I'm not having to repair it when it gets done. So I just hit the reset button. But on this particular thing, I've never flown anything.
Right. But it's not a helicopter. It's not a helicopter.
It's not. It just has a rotor head that
has a
provides
rotor
the
head
lift.
that's providing the lift.
Right.
And so all the things, I'm trying to think of the word,
lift, thrust.
No.
drag.
The rotation of the helicopter, of the actual rotor blade,
Mm-hmm.
is the gyroscopic precession. I get meaning, when you honk on the rudder going to the right, which is the direction that the rotor is going, it's easier to make a turn.
Yes.
And therefore, when you try to make a left turn, it doesn't
It's
turn.
very difficult.
It's very difficult
You're
to
turning
go
against the rotation
of that.
Right.
And so, that's where banking with the ailerons, or making the head bank like a regular, aileron turn, helps to make a left-hand turn.
Right.
But that also does some other things when you're flying like that, especially when you're going, depending on how fast you're going or how slow you're going,
Right.
is going to depend on what the bird's going to do. And it's just one of those things, until you fly it a few times and just start playing with that.
Yeah, I'll have to do some more flying.
And then once, that's where gyrocopters get extremely fun to me.
Yeah.
Because if you have a 5-mile-an-hour breeze that's out there and you're just flying around like normal, and then you put it into a high alpha, next thing you know, you can land just like a helicopter. You can come straight down,
just hover land it,
and you can hover land it. Now you just play with your throttle to keep the speed up, because it's still blowing over the blades, or under the blades as well, that can keep the speed up on it. And like I said, and that raises you up or down. It's just a different way of flying altogether.
It is very different. What was weird for me is that it's not something you can just take off from the ground.
No, it helps to hand. That's why I was saying hand launching it can be very easy. Hand launching is easy once you get the technique that I was kind of doing to launch it. If you do it on the ground, it's a problem, because if you don't get that head speed up,
right,
you get it up halfway. Well, now you have that gyroscopic precession plus what's going on the front disc with the propeller and that on top. It always tends to want to go to the left or flop over to the left. So you have to be on the rudder and the aileron head to counter that. And if you're behind it, the thing's going to flip over and you're going to get a blade strike from hitting the ground.
You're right.
And that's why
destroy your blades.
Well, eventually will destroy your blades. Luckily this design has little stoppers or keepers.
Yeah, they're pins.
They're like little pins or toothpicks, and the point of them is that they keep the blades out, so it's easier for them to spin up. You don't need to have them in there. You can fly them without it, but it's just easier to get the blades out, get the head speed you need, and then start flying. And then when you have a ground strike or any kind of strike, they shear and break, and the blade folds in.
Shear pins, I think.
Shear pins, if you want to call them. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting, which we forgot, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Well, nature will provide.
Yeah. Jay was we were loading the truck. Jay pulls up this little bag of shear pins, and he says, "Okay, we don't want to forget these." And I'm like, "Yeah, all right." So he set them back down on the counter. We forgot them. So we got all the way out there to the park, and luckily Mother Nature provided a bunch of little, sticks, and we kind of made it work.
Yeah, it worked. It worked fine.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of excited. I'm looking forward to getting back out there and trying it again.
Yeah, it would be kind kind of neat. I'm looking forward to it myself.
Right.
So just a little bit of repair on the landing gear because the little.
Now, I will tell you that like I said, this model has like 3 or 4 different versions.
Mm-hmm.
And on one of them, they have a pre-rotator. And a pre-rotator, I have another gyrocopter by Durafly. And the first model I bought did not have, just like yours. We just kind of spun it up, hand launched, or I tried to launch it from the ground if there was enough wind. And it was hit or miss. It took me 2 or 3 tries to get it off the ground every time, even after I got used to flying it sometimes to take it off the ground. And that's on the runway that I had. So the next model that came out, they had this pre-rotator, and I was just able to buy it and attach it to my model. Makes it so much easier. And basically you put it on another channel, like, your aux channel. Mm-hmm. And so I had it on my radio, my Spectrum radio. I had it on the little trainer button. So when I push the trainer button, it activates the motor and it spins the head up. So I'd spin the head up until it got the speed, and then taking off, it would go a foot. And it would just take off.
So it's a little motor that's attached.
It's a little motor that has a gear on it that goes to a bigger gear, and it just spins the head up, and then you just stop. Once it's up to speed, you let go, and the thing just takes off. And it's amazing when you have the speed on the head. It just comes off the ground, and it's so easy. It makes it a lot of fun when the speed's up. But you, like you were saying before, when you were doing your, once again, years of training, you have to pull back the throttle, the head stops moving,
right?
And, it slows down, and then all of a sudden the thing starts falling out of the sky.
That was kind of weird.
So
you out at the park, we had a successful flight, and then we tried it again and kind of dinged up the landing gear on a little bit of a harder landing.
Right.
So we decided rather than to continue to push it, we'd bring it back and strengthen up the landing gear so it wouldn't rattle around so much. So about that time, you had something else that
I brought down, like I said, I brought down a couple of toys. So I brought down, because I didn't, I got to bring something down to fly. So once again,
I don't have enough in the other room, believe it or not.
So once again, normally I for Christmas I always get Mike something. So this Christmas I had a dilemma, because the dilemma was, I was like, well, I always get him some RC gift. I should get him something different. And fortunately, Mike likes to shoot. And so I thought I'd get him something shooting related. And it's kind of funny because I've tried to get him some shooting related gifts for the past 3 years. And I keep buying him RC gear. Because quite literally, the day before we go out, once, like I said before, I'll see something on YouTube, or I'll see something on sale, or see something, it just falls in my lap and I get it for him.
Right.
So this time I was able to kind of forego that, and but I still had something in the back of my head, and I was watching. Let me back up a little bit. Mike and I have this little thing. We will see something or we'll hear something, and then we send each other YouTube videos, and we call it. And I'm sure you know about it. We going down the rabbit hole, because I send you, look at this glider, or look at this plane, or look at this thing.
Yeah, and then 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm still looking at this thing. This has turned into something large,
much larger.
Yeah, way more.
And then he sends me like 2 or 3 back, and it's like this little war going on for who can waste each other's time the most. So I don't know how I got onto it, but I've been, I do FPV work, or gears. Not gears.
And that stands for what?
I'm sorry?
That stands for what?
Oh, I'm sorry. First person view.
First person view.
That's right.
Okay.
So this is I've been kind of dabbling in this for the past 3 years or so. And when I started, you started with a big newscaster camera. You had to have a truck. I went into the helicopter, because the things were so big and bulky.
Sure.
So once again, in the past 3 years, they miniaturized everything so you could fit it in your pocket. And I mentioned, I think, in our Christmas podcast about some of the smaller gear that's coming out. So one of the things, Mike, he doesn't really like quads all that much. He can fly them, but it just isn't his thing. So I saw in a YouTube video that now, instead of just quad FPV racing, they've started racing with wings. And I thought, wow, that would be really great. Or combat with wings. Or combat with FPV. So I thought, wow, well, Mike flies in that little park here in Arizona. And I said, well, there's really not any miniaturized wings or fighting type things I probably could put together some gear from some of the things that I've seen. I could probably put together some sort of platform for them to use. So that's what it kind of turned into one of those projects. So over the course of the month, I put together this plane, which is kind of a wing. I guess it's a pod, basically a wing with a pod, and it's called the pterodactyl. It's just from this little company, once again in China, and I kind of stumbled across it. And also from Banggood Hobbies, there's an all-in-one unit. It weighs 5 grams, 6 grams.
It's super lightweight.
It's a teeny tiny FPV camera with receiver. And it does every channel you can imagine. The newest version that I have, can go from 25 watts up to 200 watts. Excuse me, not watts, milliwatts. I'm watts. We'd be frying out everybody's systems around here.
My television's not working.
So I kind of threw this thing together. It uses a 2-cell, battery, 800 milliamp battery. It uses a little blue under motor. I think I have a 3000 kV motor in the back, so barely a 24 gram motor. The wing, I want to say it's like 660 millimeters. So what do you want to think, Mike? About 1.5 foot maybe wide. It's not very wide.
What, that little wing that you?
Yeah.
Oh, it's probably 1/2 foot wide, right?
Okay.
Oh, yeah, 6 inches. So yeah, probably about 1.5 foot. You're
yeah.
Right.
So my whole idea was that you had something that you could fly close into yourself, and you could fly into obstacles. So, you could fly low to the ground, through trees, around, obstacles. And that was the whole purpose. I wanted to build it super light, so it didn't have the mass when it ran into anything that would break anything.
Right.
And, that's where the fun is, because you could take it up high and you could fly around with it. But really my thought was, this is something that you can cruise low to the ground with. And,
which I'm used to doing anyway.
Nape of the earth type stuff. And it would be a lot of fun. So I went out, and I still hadn't, of course, being in Alaska, at the time I went out to test it, it was in November, and it just
chilly.
It just snowed. It was a little chilly. It was just still warm enough to go out and fly. I flew it, and I was having CG issues because, once again, this little Chinese company, CG, what is that? So
you figure that out.
You figure that out. It's part of fun.
That's right.
So I go out, and the plane flew okay, but it would just, if you got too slow, it'd snap roll. So the CG was too far back. And so I still hadn't figured that out. And I'm like, I don't want to send this down to Mike, and flying crazy. And he's like, oh, thanks, Jay.
Right.
So I just kind of got it. I had an idea of what I had to do. And so I set it up when we got out there, and it flew great, out of the box. And except that it maybe ballooned up a little bit. It got affected by the wind a bit, but I'm still working on that. But why don't you tell the folks how it worked out for you? What you thought of it?
Yeah. Well, we flew it without the FPV first to kind of figure it out. It flies pretty much like a wing. It did slow down. It does have that stall spin characteristic. When you hit it slow, it wants to, if you actually do stall it, it wants to just kind of snap over. And I think Tom and some of the other guys that flew the little bubbles had the same issue.
Oh yeah,
they're really short coupled.
Yeah,
and they'll just roll. It's not that big of a deal. You push a little bit of forward stick and a little bit of power, and it'll come right out and fly around. But it does fly really slow. It flies, just typically like a wing. So I tested it out, flew it around a little bit, and Jay says, okay, here, put these on. And he hands me this set of goggles, which is very strange. I put the goggles on, and there's 2 little television cameras in there, which is kind of weird. And he's holding the little pterodactyl thing. So I can see myself sitting on the park bench with these goggles on. That was very weird for me to be able to see that. So I'm like waving at myself. I can see it through the goggles. Well, then he says, tell me when you're ready and I'll launch it. But in reality, I had no idea. I didn't know if you're going to launch at my head or, you turned a little bit. Now I can see the sidewalk. How big of a view does that thing have?
I want to say that it does maybe about 120 degrees of view. 110 or 120, somewhere in there.
From a normal view, you have about 180 plus your peripheral, that kind of thing. This one kind of cut a little bit of that off, and you didn't have the 180 degrees up and down. That cuts that down quite a bit too. So I'm looking at these two cameras, and I didn't know. This is where communication comes in, but I didn't know he was ready. He didn't know I was ready. He was waiting on me. I was waiting on him. We sat there for probably 2-3 minutes. And
I just thought you were taking it all in.
Yeah, I was kind of trying to see what was going on, and I was moving controls, and he's like, "Are you ready?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm ready." And so I gave it a little throttle and launched it, and it was very strange because I can see out the front of this thing, and the video was, basically I climbed up. If I climb too high, I lose sight of the ground. And so that was kind of not really disheartening because I fly aerobatics. I know what it's like to look, but I couldn't look to the left to see where my wingtip was.
Exactly.
So as I turn my head, it's the same view. The view doesn't change. No matter, I rotate my head all around and it's still looking forward. That was very, very strange for me. But I was able to turn the airplane around, flew it. I'm not really sure how high because I could only see.
And if you notice, that's why I kept reading out, "Hey, Mike, you're this high.
Right.
You're at this corner of the park. You're in this part of the park."
Right.
I didn't think that you didn't know, but like I was telling you, you lose SA because it's a totally different perspective.
It was. I felt like I was a lot lower than I probably was.
When we first launched, you got up there.
Did I?
Yeah.
It was pretty high. But because of the way the camera is, it seems like I'm lower. So I flew around up there, and that was fine. We went to one of the corners of the park, and I lost some.
Yeah, that happened. Signal. That just happened once. I don't know what happened.
I'm not sure what happened. I was up high enough that I probably got some interference because the what do you call it? The goggles went fuzzy. They didn't go black, but they just kind of put that little wavy, like your television is not getting good reception. And then the airplane just kind of got slow and stalled. And I tried to recover from the stall, but I had literally no left and right aileron input. So it came down. I pulled the power at idle, and I could see the spiral inside the goggles, which I will tell you from a pilot's perspective is not a good idea to watch yourself go into the ground with the goggles. That was very disturbing for me. I'm like, hey, the ground's coming up. Hit the eject button.
Right. I'm pulling for the handles. Where are they?
Exactly. The handles weren't there, but. Anyway, Jay was nice. He walked across the park all the way over and picked it up and gave me the thumbs up in the camera, but we couldn't get the motor to work.
Right.
So, and what was wrong with the motor?
Oh, it just pulled out the connectors that connect the motors with the escape. It just pulled apart.
Right.
It was no big deal. Just pushed them back together. So I just have to put some heat shrink on those.
So the second time he launched it, and it was a little bit better because now I knew what to expect. Because the first time I had no clue. So now I'm flying around the park. I have a better idea of where the park is. Those of you who have been on our website know that you kind of see the park is kind of kidney shaped, really.
Yeah.
But when we flew the Cub on there and we did the video, so I'm familiar with what it looks like from above. And then he kept saying, "Come down lower, come down lower, come down in the trees." That was really weird because the lower I got, it felt like I was even lower than I really was. So you would say, "Hey, you're right at the tree line." And I'd be like, "What are you talking about? I'm going to run into these trees." But I picked it up. I guess I picked it up pretty quick.
Yeah, you did really well. And like I said, that's why I was talking to you the whole time because that's because of the perspective of the camera, and different cameras give you different perspectives when you look through these things. So it does help to have somebody say, "Hey, you're this high up. You're 50 feet. You're 100 feet." Because like you said, what do you mean? I'm 25 feet off the ground. No, man, you're way up there. Really? Oh, you recalibrate your brain and then you're okay. And, unfortunately the wind started to pick up a little bit the lower you got.
Yeah.
So it made it a little bit more difficult.
One of the wings up occasionally. It would get a little bit more difficult.
So that was the only bad part with that thing being as light as it was. The lower you were getting you could see every time you turned and started going into the wind, it would bubble up so you'd gain like 5 to 10 feet of altitude. So as you're trying to get low and trying to, get through something or get close to stuff, and you're getting bounced around a little bit. So
yeah, but it was still pretty interesting, and I actually did get low to the ground.
You sure did.
Yeah, I got a couple of them where I thought the blades of grass were looking mighty large.
So the other thing is you really have to have a little bit of spatial awareness and good SA.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, so flying somewhere that you're familiar with is good. And then knowing the capabilities of it. Cause a couple of times I said, "Hey, ring that thing around, like really bring it around," because you would make slow, you're being calculating. You're just making nice, slow, calculated arc. And I'd be like, honk on the stick, and you'd honk on the stick, and you'd whip it right around.
Yeah, it whipped around pretty quick too.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting it to come around that quick.
And it's just one of those things for you just to get used to flying it like that. So your capabilities, but that it was definitely. I could see you started smiling, and so you couldn't see it.
I couldn't see through the.
You couldn't see. Of course, you couldn't see it, but you started smiling. The lower you got, the more you started to smile. So I was like, score.
One more thing to spend my money on.
I think he likes this. Because the lower he got, and and I noticed the speed started coming up, and and I saw you start. Now you were figuring out, you're like starting to enjoy it,
right?
And I said, well, now that because once again, when you're up high and you're just flying around, because you had no problems when you're flying high and you were doing, you started rolling it and you started doing it. You had wasn't even a phased you,
no.
But when you got low to the ground, and you can see when you see the speed. You finally see how fast you're going.
Right.
And then you were trying to, like the two trees you were trying to fly, through. Now it's like, okay, how do I pick my way around the park? But now I lose when I start to see where I'm supposed to fly. I lose sight of the trees that were on my right side. So how close am I to those trees?
Yeah.
So all those thoughts, I could see, you're starting to concentrate and you're smiling. So like I said, I could tell when you really like things because your brow. Well, I couldn't see your brow because of the things, but your brow gets together and you start smiling. And I know that you're liking what you're doing.
Right.
At the harder you're concentrating on it. So I think I might have gotten a score on this one.
I liked it. It was kind of neat. It was interesting. For me, I did fly low between the two trees. That was pretty. I heard you yelling "score" out there. But it was very interesting and a neat experience for me. So I could see myself probably doing this again.
Right.
I think if I get used to how low, what's low and what's
so
close or
the
high.
Nice part about this, Mike, is that honestly, you can get into this setup that I just kind of made this plane on my own. No big deal. Just with pieces and parts. And I mean, half the parts you have laying around your house anyway, but
probably,
the most expensive thing would be getting a set of goggles that you like, and they could be as cheap. Like I think we talked about this before, but they could be as cheap as $50 to about $150, depending on what you want to get.
Right.
And the plane itself is $25, and the all-in-one unit, I think right now, I got mine for $15 on a special, but generally they run about $20 to $25. So
that's not super expensive to get into the project, but the goggles are like a radio, right?
Kind of like a radio.
Yeah, your big expense into FPV is the goggles.
Exactly.
Because they run. I looked at some now that you can mention this, and I think even Peter at the park, he has a set of fat sharks. Fat sharks.
Right.
And they I think the version he has runs about $350.
Right.
Or so.
So it just depends on, and there's two different types. You have like the Fat Sharks and mine both have two TV screens.
Right.
And, you may or may not like those. And then now, like I said, the $50 ones, if you've ever looked through the VR virtual reality 3D glasses,
right.
Basically it's a flat screen and then you're looking through two lenses that just give you this huge, being a theater type experience.
Oh, I see.
So some people like that better, but some don't because you can't see as much detail as you can with the two smaller TV screens. So it all depends on the style of flying and what you're doing, type of thing.
I like Alaska Mike's deal where you wear the cap and just, tape your cell phone.
With the TV.
You duct tape your cell phone on the
Two cell phones in your head. Yeah, no problem.
That'd be easy.
Alaska Mike does have some good.
Hey, look at this.
That works.
That works.
And
That's
just put
funny.
a pillowcase over your head. You're
there
good.
You go. Nobody'd ever notice.
But no. So really, the part that I like about this coming up, this is what gets me kind of excited. So what I like about our with the tough wings that we fly,
right,
is A, they're super tough. B, if you hit each other, it's a hoot and a holler. But when it's just you and I, and we're trying to hit each other, we might as well have taped $100 bills on the plane and said, hit each other. Whoever hits each other first gets all the $100 bills.
Yeah, it ain't going to happen.
It ain't going to happen. I mean, the only time we hit each other is when we're not paying attention either. We hit each other every time.
It's always unintentional.
Always unintentional. Very, very, very rarely. And I mean, then we're totally scripting what we're doing. I am turning right. Ready? Countdown. 3, 2, 1. Break right. So you're, to try to hit each other, and it never works or barely ever works. So with this though, having a forward of FPV view, it would be very easy for me to contact you.
Why do you say that?
Okay, well, if you got something with, like I said, those cameras that I have, I intentionally got them with a very narrow view because of the type of flying. You can get them with a little bit wider view. So therefore you have a little bit more peripheral vision, right? So if we're flying around and you had a little wider view, and you were following, and I'm flying, you know how it is when we're flying and you're following me, and we're on the ground, we're looking up 50 feet, we're flying really close to ourselves, but still the perspective of, am I above you or am I 3 feet directly to your right, further from you?
Yeah, it's a parallax view, I think.
Yes, parallax view. So I don't know if you're above me or just more to the right.
Right.
So it's very hard unless I'm standing right up, looking underneath us to see where I'm at. So that's what I was saying with the FPV view, though.
Now you can get level with me.
Now I can get level. Now I can see in the goggles that you are above me, that I'm you're a little bit above me, and I can fly up into you.
Unfortunately, there is a view gap. So if I got outside of that view, you have to turn and find me, right?
I have to turn and find you, but it's a little easier SA.
Right.
Because
we're both at the same height.
We're both at the same height, or even if you were not. I mean, when you were flying, there wasn't any other planes that were flying out there. It would help. It would help if you could see them. But if you were to fly out there with a bunch of other planes, and then they got out of your view, once again, being that you're a very spatial guy, you'd know that he was flying that way, and then you can continue your turn to the left, and more than likely you're going to intercept him as he comes through. That type of thing.
That's true. Having that 3-dimensional thought process from being a pilot, I can see how that would work.
Yeah. So I just see that as being the future too, for just having combat with guys instead of because once again, having combat with somebody, normally you have to have 6-10 guys, and then, and then you can fight in the box. But now if you had a bunch of just 3 or 4 guys and everybody had cameras and you're trying to fly into each other, it's a lot easier.
Yeah, it seems like it'd be a lot of fun. We'll have to get more people involved, I think.
I just think that there could be a future in it. Or if you set up a, they're doing it now with the quadcopters. When they're racing, it's pretty much they're flying through gates or whatever. But there's some league I've seen on TV, and they're flying in like football stadiums, and they're flying through up and down through stuff. And although it wouldn't be as 3-dimensional as that with a wing, just think about it. If you had to fly through gates, but you had to fly, through a tunnel, or you had to fly through, up and over something, or around something,
right?
That would be a hoot.
It would be pretty fun.
Especially
knowing ahead of time that you weren't going to destroy your airplane.
No,
that makes it a lot easier.
Oh yeah,
the airplane just bounces off and you throw it back.
Really, for the cost of this plane, you could put together 3 planes.
Yeah,
and go fly them. And if you damaged one, you could just turn on the next one.
Yeah,
and you only have $50 in each plane, type of thing, as opposed to building, big serious planes.
Right.
I almost call these as being disposable. Because all the components on them, this all-in-one unit, hey, it's not the best. It's not the best quality for clarity for what you see, but it's only $25. So if you damage it,
can't go wrong.
Buy 3 of them, buy 4 of them.
Right.
It's only $100. So
Well, I think Peter asked us today at the park if we were going to come by. He's got a big PFV wing that he flies out there. So I think while you're here this week, we'll.
So that'll be the other side of the spectrum.
Right.
I'm kind of like with Alaska Mike. We get some sticks and twigs and we put some bundling wire on it, and we call it good. So Peter definitely is the other side of the spectrum of that. But
we'll go see him and
find German engineering.
Yeah, no
Peter.
doubt. And then we were able to maiden another airplane today. What did you think of my F-15? This is the first time you've seen it.
Oh, yeah. So Michael has, I guess they had a sale. No, this is before the sale.
Yeah,
you've had this model sitting around in the closet for
almost
a long time.
Yeah, well over a year.
No, well over. So this is pretty funny. So when we started out with these GWS planes,
right?
And they were great kits for what they were about 6 years ago.
Yeah, I think it's on my blog on the RC Groups is when I put it together.
So he built one originally, like 6 or 8 years ago, an F-15. And you got to understand, this thing used these IPS motors, which are DC motors, brush motors. And the EDFs were, they were, it was bad. So
they were tiny.
They were tiny.
But they produced, they had like 4 blades. It sounded like a really bad hair dryer.
Yeah. But they worked and they flew.
Yeah, they flew
not
around.
With a lot, they were on the margin. They were flying.
Yeah, it took a while to get it airborne, but once it got airborne, as long as you kept speed up,
yeah.
Right.
But, they'd last a couple of minutes and they'd come down.
Sure.
So the nice part about these planes were they were made with the styrene, styrofoam,
beer cooler
foam. And so the good bad of that is that if they crash, poof, confetti, hey, it's a parade. But that styrofoam is uber light.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Uber.
Light.
EPO is cool and it's dense and all that kind of stuff. And you can really mold it. But the foam, that styrene foam it's so light. It's incredibly light.
Yeah.
So Mike, being a Texan, decided, well, if I could go bigger with stuff, I use these little IPS motors in this, but now I have these new modern, brushless power motors. I'll get a 10 or 12, 10. What do you have?
I think it's a 12 blade.
12 blade. So this thing sounds smooth like butter. It just sounds like power.
It does sound like it.
And
there's 2 of them.
And there's 2 of them, right? So it would fly on one. Folks, you gotta understand, this plane could fly on one, no problem.
Yeah.
Mike, he said, well, they designed it for 2. I'll put 2 in there. So he cramps 2 of these motors, which are way heavier than the old ones. So we had to do a little bit of modding. We got it in there, got them in there. And the problem is that the batteries they used was a 1300 2-cell, I think.
Yeah, it was something small. 2 or 3 cell.
I don't know. It was like the size of a postage stamp or something. The batteries, they were tiny.
Well, I think they were NEMA before, right?
Yeah, they were. First, yeah. So the fuselage where the batteries go is very narrow and thin.
Oh my gosh!
So the batteries today are for the LiPo are kind of thick. They're kind of thicker and squarish.
Right.
And those were more rectangly.
Is that a word?
Yeah, that is for today. So the problem was these motors that Mike put in there. Hey, great, they a lot of power, but in order to give them the power they need, you got to really do some mods and some whittling and some, praying and some other stuff in order to get the batteries to fit in there. So a little bit of ingenuity and all the little techniques we told you about, we were able to hollow out some stuff, refiberglass the inside and get some little 2200 battery in there. And it flew great.
Yeah.
It flew
great.
It flew fantastic. Because it would just climb like nobody's business because it didn't weigh anything. The heaviest thing was literally the battery and the 2 motors that came with that. The body of the plane weighed nothing.
You're talking about the first version, right?
The first version.
Yeah, the one I built. Right.
So anyway, Mike said, "Hey, I got another plane, a spare plane, and it's sitting in my closet. I'm going to put it together. What do you think what theme should I put on it?" And I looked at it and I go, "Hey, up in Alaska, we have these interceptor aircraft. They're black and white and they look really cool." And I showed him. He fell in love with it and he goes, "Oh, I'm going to do it in this theme." And this guy can paint. So he has this great looking model. And it's kind of like it stayed in that stage for a year.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
For about a year.
Yeah.
A year and a half.
Now, when it came, it was just all white.
Right. It was just a plain
white, and it has no power system or anything to it.
It was just the frame.
Just the frame. And it's all white. And they basically sold replacement parts for the other GWS.
Right.
I bought the entire kit replacement part is what I did. So I have one already that I built. And then I upgraded it, like what Jay was talking about. I upgraded it to these new fangled, big 12 blade EDFs. It sounded great, looked great. And then now I have this new model, but I don't really need it because the other one was flying. So I decided to go ahead and airbrush this thing. And then to dedicate it, because Jay came up with the idea, I actually found some
AK stickers
AK
and stuff.
stickers.
Yeah, looks pretty good. It looks good. It looks great.
So anyway,
So
didn't mean to interrupt you.
So folks, we went out today. This was a Maiden Tuesday, I guess.
Yeah.
So we went out today with the guys, and they all lined up. You could tell what plane they like, because they all line up as my wife was across the way walking the dog. She goes, "Yeah, all those fellas just lined up on the sidewalk, and they whipped out their cameras." So first they're like, "Well, where are the wheels on it? How are you going to launch it?" So I'm the launchee. And so I'm kind of figuring out how I'm going to hold this thing. And let's just say you've had some interesting launches from those guys.
Yeah, those guys do a pretty good job. Yeah. But sometimes it just depends on how people launch. But I've had some that went right straight in the air. I've had some that went towards the ground, and
like spiking football towards the ground.
Football. Everybody's kind of figured out how to launch it now. But very first launches are usually quite exciting.
Yes. So we got out there, and this plane was a little different than the first one. The first one was
just elevons.
Mm-hmm. And this one you added. At first you weren't going to do it.
I wasn't. It just I was going to make it just elevator and ailerons.
Right.
So the way this model works is that you can cut the elevators out, because it all comes in one part. So you can cut the elevators out, attach the elevator, or attach the stabilizer to the body, and then you have independent elevators and you have independent ailerons.
Right.
And because of the servos that I purchased to put into this thing, I realized that wasn't going to work because they were so huge. So what I decided to do on this one, I don't know, it was a one night and I think what caused it is because I unpacked my foam cutter and I was just whipping through foam cutting stuff, and I thought, oh, this will be a nice cut on these stabilizers. So I basically cut the stabilizers and made them elevons again.
Right.
So I didn't cut the elevators. I made them elevons. But now I've got elevons and ailerons. And so in my radio, I have to figure out how to program where these things will actually work. Now, please understand that the real airplane flies just like this. It flies with movable stabilizers, I think is what they call them.
Yeah.
They work simultaneously as elevators, and they work simultaneously as elevons. And then it gives it this turn ratio that's very, very quick. So what I decided to do was to take the radio. I have a DX18, and I took the radio and I made it an aircraft EDF, and then I took 2 aileron servos and 2 V-tail servos. So now my elevator works the whole stabilizers as an elevator. The ailerons work in the roll mode, and the rudder makes these go into a, what would you call that? It's just the opposite, like an elevon mode.
Right.
So it's literally 3 modes in one. Took a little bit of programming, but once I figured it out, it works perfect. Just have to remember that one side is on one stick. So when you go to make a left-hand turn and left-hand rudder and, forward, it's pretty exciting. So anyway, back to your launch.
Yeah, so I get out there, and just to make sure, I give it a good huck, as Mike powers it up, and I get the nod from him. I give it the huck. You got a little bit of a left-hand turn, but you were able to correct for it. So gave you a good angle, and she climbed right up there.
Oh yeah,
pretty quick.
She went skyward,
and he was looking smooth, and then all of a sudden, it did the little donkey dance, and
is that what that's called? The donkey dance?
And so I'm looking at it.
Huckabucking.
Yeah. Huckabucking. And so I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, so was that him or was that the plane? That's the first thing that goes through my head.
Right.
Doesn't look like it's the plane. I don't think it's a linkage. Or the next thing I think is, did the battery come loose?
Right.
Because it started acting like it was tail heavy.
Yeah, it did feel tail heavy.
Right. Well, let's just say that Mr. Moan's incredible programming has made an uber super sensitive, once again, that aircraft was built to be a fighter jet.
That's right.
And fighter jets are unstable.
Yeah.
And that's how they are, the premier air superiority in the world. And this represents it to a T. So it was very sensitive, I would say.
Yeah, it was really more sensitive than I had expected it to be honest. Yeah.
So you kind of got, I saw you take a deep breath and got control, you just calmed down and then the plane flew okay.
Sure.
But whenever you kind of got your thumb in it, once again, it did that tail heavy, not, like it was tail heavy. It did fly like it was tail heavy.
The first time,
but I don't think it's tail. I just think it's the sensitivity of the aircraft because you had no kind of expo and anything, did you?
Oh no,
you had no expo.
It was 100%.
It was 100% everything.
I try not to do that when I'm maiden,
right.
just from the sheer fact that I want all the controls. I know some people, some people are kind of like, no, I definitely want to put it in
this
there,
one,
I need to feel it.
You asked for it and you got exactly
I got 100% of
it.
Yeah.
So the plane, like you said, when you kind of, all right, I'll do a roll or I'll do, it just, what I liked was when you kind of whipped, it just flipped right around inside itself.
Oh yeah, that was pretty
It just kind of comes right around. So
and it glides real well.
It does.
Especially on a 1300. It lasted all of about a minute 30.
Minute 30. But luckily you had something with some high C rating, so it was fine. But no, I think once we get that one kind of dialed in, that's going to be a sweet flying plane.
Yeah, I think so.
It's going to be
and
awesome.
It looks good.
And it looks great.
Yeah,
it looks great.
Thanks to you.
I'm just an idea guy. I'm just like I said, I'm just the muse out there to help you and the viewers realize that you have potential.
I know. My glider didn't get maiden today because we had some sort of electronic issue with the tail. The rudder and elevator weren't working, so I think we'll post a picture today. Sure. I think Tom or somebody took a photo of my 3.
But you know what? That's okay.
Yeah, no, it was good.
Because maybe somebody was looking out for us today, saying you shouldn't fly this today.
That's probably true.
So I'll just chalk it up to that. So rather find out because that one's a crier.
That one is a crier.
That one you will cry over because this guy. I found him a great deal on this plane, but I
got to be careful. You saved me a ton of money on the fuselage,
on the actual
kit airframe, but that kind of got out of hand when I started putting the components in it. So.
Then it went downhill quick.
Yeah, it did go downhill quick.
So,
and since our wives listen to this podcast, probably not a good idea to discuss that right now. Give her some time at least.
Beep. It was beep much.
Exactly. And then I spent, and then
I showed my buddies and he said, holy beep, that much you spent.
That's funny.
So I did bring out one other thing, and unfortunately you didn't get a chance to fly it, but I'll break it out actually after the podcast. We'll fly it around the house.
Okay.
But I brought out my King Kong 130 GT, which is a quadcopter, and it's also FPV. And I use in a 130 millimeter quadcopter is you pretty much almost can fly it inside. It's very, very small, but this thing is very, very powerful. And the reason I got it was so you could fly amongst things with it because once again, it weighs nothing and you could take a hit and don't have to worry about damaging it.
I'm always for that.
Yeah. So it's using the same similar camera like the pterodactyl had. It's flying on 850. Yeah, almost the same type of components. 850 milliamp, milliamp battery, 2-cell battery. I have like 5,000 kV motors in it.
Wow! So
it sounds like some crazy angry bees who've been shaking up their nest.
And the beehives are here.
It's flying off of 3-inch blades.
Wow!
So it's just So, but it's.
I'm sure my dog will go crazy.
I got a chance to, I put this together in Alaska, so I've only been able to fly it, not in FPV mode, but just raw flying it, just to my house. And I didn't even fly it out. I didn't even get a chance to fly it outside. I flew it in the house just to make sure everything was working. It's really the first time I flew it with FPV and, everything was out in your field.
Right.
And, it was fun. I was really enjoying it. In fact, I clicked it into manual mode and I did my first roll in a quadcopter
Wow.
And kind of hit the ground. But anyway, so I have some tuning to do, but I enjoyed that immensely. It was a lot of fun. The weird part was too, I guess, because with a lot of the quadcopters and things, I'm kind of close by and I can kind of hear it.
Right.
And that one I had all the way across the park, so I couldn't hear it.
Oh, right.
You know, so usually I can tell if, you know, once again, by hearing it and I could, by the pitch of the motors, I can hear that I'm adding more power in, or I need to add a little bit more. And since I couldn't hear anything, it was all by visual cues.
That's weird.
So that's another one of those weird things. And in fact, the first time the way I kind of got hooked on this, I had a buddy, his name's Andre, and he was into this first, and he took me on a ride. So he flew the quadcopter and he gave me a ride, and it was a blast.
When you say a ride, that means you're wearing goggles.
I'm wearing the goggles, and I was sitting down in the chair. And so for me, anyway, I have to sit in a chair because I'm a leaner. You know,
yeah, you lean one way.
He starts going faster. I start leaning forward.
Right.
You know, he slows down. I back up. And so I'm kind of leaning in the chair, doing a little roller coaster ride to myself. And, you know, some guys can just stand up and do it, but I can't. I don't have that ability. So, in fact, the more and more I've really enjoyed it, because he's doing pirouettes and he's doing all these things, you know, to get me sick or just kind of do whatever, get me disorientated. And I'm just into it. You know, in fact, the closer and lower he got down to the ground, the better I liked it. So I'm just like, this is so much fun.
Right.
Well, so once again, he was just flying in front of us. So as I'm flying by, I'd see us off, you know, my vision, peripheral vision, I see that I'm flying past us. And you'd hear it, you know, the Doppler effect as we flew by. And I'd be like, oh, we just flew by ourselves. So everything was fine. Then he went out in the field, and he started coming towards us. And he's cooking in this thing. And it was a fairly large quadcopter at the time. Remember I told you, you know, you had to have a news truck for the beginning. So anyway, he's cruising towards us. So you hear this B-52 like type thing buzzing towards us. Where mine sounds like a bee, his sounds like, you know, a bus.
Right.
So he's buzzing in towards us, and so I can hear it, you know, and plus now I'm speeding. Now, so you got to imagine, folks. So in the goggles, I can see I'm rushing towards myself at neck break speed, and I can hear it coming.
Right.
Right. So I hear this bus coming towards me. Now I can't see the bus, but I can hear the bus. And so I know the bus is coming, and I can see how fast the bus is coming towards me. And it's low to the ground. It's at my level. It he's going to hit us.
Right.
And it's coming, and it's coming. And so the next thing I know, the faster he goes, what do? I lean forward. So imagine this. Let's say Mike's sitting across from me in the desk, and he stands up and he goes to throw a punch at my face. I see the punch coming at my face. What am I going to do? What do I do?
You rock backwards.
You rock back. You naturally rock backwards.
Right.
But I'm in the goggles. So what am I doing as I'm going faster at myself?
Oh, you rock forward.
So it's like I'm sitting on your fist coming towards my face. What do? I lean forward. So I'm leaning forward into the punch that's going to punch me in the face, which counteracts the natural reaction of leaning back.
Right.
My brain short-circuited. That is the first time I've ever gotten sick.
Really?
I've ever gotten motion sick.
Huh.
Was that. I've been on boats, trains, planes, you know, almost rockets. I've been on a lot of things, and I don't get sick.
Yeah, I think there's a video of you trying to get sick on mine, but
I thought you were going to mess with me that whole time. I was waiting for you to stack up the G's. I thought you were going to really hurt me. So that's why I was doing that the whole time. So anyway, sorry, folks. So he's coming right at us, and I'm leaning forward, and I can hear it, and it sounds like he's going to hit us, you know, because he's going so fast. Mm-hmm. And then he puts on the brakes right in front of us and lands.
Ugh.
Well, I about topple out of the chair, and you know, I'm like, you know, I'm looking for the blue bag. I don't have a blue bag,
right.
You know, and that just messed. I mean, just like you put me in a rubber room, bounced it around, spun it, and then you let me out like playing dizzy bat. You know, I was just like,
I'm done for the day.
I'd never been messed up like that before.
Yeah,
never,
that's
and my butt was sitting in a chair.
The whole time.
But after that I was kind of hooked. But I don't fly towards myself that much.
Yeah, no doubt.
I don't fly towards myself that much after that. But Other than that, I love it. So it's a hoot.
Well, before we go, we got to talk to Jim a little bit today about his new Mavic.
Yeah, Maverick. Was it Mavic or Maverick or Maverick?
I think it's a
by DJI, right?
Yeah, it's a DJI Mavic.
It's amazing.
That thing was truly amazing.
It is. I am just amazed at once again, technology. A year's gone by, and
that's worth a podcast on its own. Actually.
Oh, it is. It is.
That was pretty amazing, though. We put Jay on the hot seat and made him the point of interest in this little camera, and then told him to take off running. And he ran all over the park, and this quad would follow him around. It was quite spectacular to watch this thing move.
And it uses a typical cell phone.
Yeah,
you don't need any special gear, just a
and it goes out
cell
4 miles.
Yeah,
4 miles. He said. We're gonna have to talk to Jim more about that. I think.
The part I loved was even though it didn't work because he had it set up differently, but this little quadcopter has the ability for you to give it hand signals. So you can give it a hand signal to take a picture, folks. It's amazing. You can also guide the thing if you want to set up a shot. You can give it directions and say, go backwards, come forwards, go to the right, go to the left, and frame yourself in a little picture. You know, how you want it to take a picture, and then tell it to take pictures. It's amazing.
Yeah, and then you can, it has...
the auto lane.
The trees. Remember when he was running for the tree?
The obstacle
avoidance.
Yeah.
So it was coming towards he flew it right at the tree. He got real close to the tree.
I was waiting for
I was waiting for that to be bundled up in the tree.
I guess they got to work on that one. I guess they got a software mod for that, huh?
Well, we'll save all that for a different podcast because we're kind of out of time. But hey, man, we are looking forward to a great week with you here and attending the Electric Festival.
Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Today was a good day at Tuesday. We're a little late on our podcast. Just
sorry, folks.
Normally we release it in the mornings, but this works really well for us. So we're going to lay down a few more, and we will talk to you again 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. So.
2 weeks. I got to think of a new logo too because I can't say Jay from the AK.
Yeah, now so TX doesn't sound as good.
So yeah, Jay from the TX.
Sound like a transmitter?
I don't know. What do people in Texas say?
I don't know. From who knows? From the big state of Big Texan? I don't know.
I have a hard time.
You know what? You
that.
have plenty of time to figure that out.
Okay.
Well, we're excited that you're here in Arizona for this week.
It does. So I'm Jay from the AZ.
That's right. So for Mike here at the ParkFlyer podcast
and Jay from the former AK.
There you go. We appreciate you joining us today. We're hoping that you'll see us again or at least listen to us again next time. And we hope you have a great day. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You have been listening to the ParkFlyer podcast. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to your next visit. Please feel free to email your questions, topics, or suggestions to parkflyerpodcast@gmail.com.